Hi guys, Levi here from Bright Young Brains, as you can see. Anyways, so in this video, I am going to lay out 4 things that you can do to somewhat reduce the level of anxiety when it comes to high school, and obviously if you're in matric, this is definitely going to help reduce matric anxiety and matric stress. So let me just dive into these points that I put out here. The first one I wrote here, this one is a big one, I wrote here, control what you can and leave out what you cannot. In simple words, right, there's like a bunch of things that you for yourself know you cannot control. Apart from that, we all know that there is usually certain things we actually can control, certain things that are within our perimeters. Now, the big idea is normally when you're anxious and your emotions are all over the place, your thoughts are all over the place, you're a bit uneasy, you're just like scared, it's usually because you will be trying to control certain things that you actually cannot control. And we all know that this is definitely exactly what happens, So for example, say there's a test coming up, an assignment coming up, a speech coming up, whatever it is, maybe even a sporting event or whatever. There are certain things that you can control. Obviously, with things like sport, like the best you can do is to just practice and train and make sure you're there all the time, With things like school in general, the least you can do is to just be doing the least you can and the least you can do. So with matric, right, there is a bunch of things that you for yourself know that you cannot control. That the blunt way of putting it is, whatever is going to be in the exam or whatever is going to be in the test that is like, building up all this anxiety, one way or the other, you do not 100% know what is going to be there. But in terms of you controlling what you actually can, you, for example, 90% of the time have a scope. When I say 90% of the time, I actually should bump it to like maybe 95%, because sometimes if, let's say, no scope is given out and they tell you that you have to study everything, one way or the other, the only thing that you can control is actually going through all the work, and what you cannot control is things like what is actually going to be in the test. So you don't want to put yourself in a situation where maybe you feel as though if you had the actual test, things were going to be a bit better, or if you had something you don't have right now, things are going to be a bit better. When I say control what you can, I'm trying to say that there are certain things that you cannot control. If, let's say, you maybe were not able to get, I don't know, a tutor or something, and now you think that's going to be the reason why you're going to flunk, that's not fair. Like, you don't want to put yourself in that situation, because all you want to do is take into account what you actually have and what you actually have at your disposal. That's what you want to focus your energy on. So you don't want to build up anxiety based on things that you actually don't have, or things you cannot control and things you wish you had. That's a bad idea. Control what you can and leave out what you definitely 100% know you cannot control. Secondly, cut out anything from your schedule that is not meaningful. So cutting out things from your schedule that is not meaningful, obviously the one thing that's going to happen is the amount of time that you have for whatever is actually important, that's low-key going to increase. Now obviously things like anxiety, that literally builds up based on time frame. Normally, let's say it's like 2 weeks away from an exam, you might feel a bit anxious about that exam, but then closer to the day you get more and more anxious. So technically speaking, we can safely say that one way or the other is the time you have for something decreases, normally the anxiety increases. So those things are inversely proportional.
Damn, son.
Anyways,
Where'd you find
so
this?
one way you can lessen the anxiety is try and make sure that you maximize the amount of time that you have to focus on whatever it is that you're trying to focus on. And the easiest way to do it is cut out everything that is not necessary. So if you, let's say, sleep a bit early and you're used to sleeping around 9 and you have just always slept around 9, or you have just always slept around 8, and whenever 8 or 9 hits, you're like, it's lights out for you, but that one way or the other for 2 hours straight you're just going to be chilling there scrolling on TikTok or whatever. If you know that's what you do, cutting out that time and actually allocating it to you being awake and actually working a bit longer, you want to do that. Now obviously, you sleeping a bit later or whatever, it's not like a bad thing if it is you going to be actually using that time constructively. Now this is one thing that many people won't tell you. Sleeping late and all that shandies, right? it only is useful to you when you know well during that time when it's like late in the night you're actually doing something meaningful. If you're just gonna stay up and, or maybe if you're just gonna think that okay, going into bed around 8 is what you need to do, but you for yourself know that every night you actually end up falling asleep around 12, you're not fooling anyone. You might as well, between that 8 o'clock to 12 midnight, you might as well do like something constructive, because as long as you actually use that time for something meaningful, I promise you, even if you wake up around 6 and you only have like 6 hours of sleep, there is this thing psychologically that is like a common phenomenon. A common what? Now, what we all know, like as human beings, is that normally when we spend a bit of time on something that we actually know is meaningful, even if let's say that thing or that activity drains our energy, we know it's worth it, and in a situation where maybe you end up getting like 4 or 5 or 6 hours of sleep, trust me, when you do wake up, you might be all tired and whatever, but a few minutes into that day, when you start to think of why it is that you're actually tired, dude, I promise you, that is more like a psychological boost. Like your confidence even goes up, because we as people, we know that when we spend time on something meaningful, we really do not worry too much about the energy that we're losing while doing it. We only get a bit uneasy when we know that we've spent a bunch of time and we're now tired, because we're just being rubbish anyways, you see. So that's basically the whole idea behind cutting out anything that is not meaningful from your schedule. I don't mean that you're magically going to have 28 hours in a day. No, I just mean that within those 24 hours, trust me, you do have time, Point number 3. This one is, I feel like I should have just made this one point number 1, because most people, they will like maybe watch 2 minutes and then they leave, and then I don't know, they expect things to change, but it is what it is. Point number 3 I mentioned here: improve your mindset by means of personal development. I'll repeat. Improve the mindset by means of personal development. Now, personal development is something that is like super underrated. If you're still in high school, grade whatever you are, 12, whatever, it doesn't matter. Things like personal development, right? If you, let's say, are not the kind of a person where the words personal development are in your vocabulary, that's a problem, you see? Because as people, right, we are always trying to improve certain aspects of our lives. Maybe depending on what kind of a person you are. I mean, like, fitness is a big deal, right? Like, we all know that we all have to stay fit. We have to go to the gym, yada, yada, yada. That's more like for the natural body. That's necessary. And I mean, as people, we, you're born, a few years later, you're going to school because you're trying to build a certain set of skills that you can use in the world or whatever. So as a people, we know we're always improving on something. But then the one thing that we hardly ever really consciously put our time towards is developing yourself as a human being that is actually going to be self-sufficient and that is actually going to be able to self-regulate. So being able to self-regulate means that you do not need too many external factors for you to keep yourself going in a certain direction that you want to go. Personal development, this is obviously leaning towards things like building your level of emotional intelligence. Now, building a level of emotional intelligence, if some of these things seem fuzzy to you, that's a problem. That's a big problem. Now, one way to build things like emotional intelligence, financial IQ, etc., the least thing you can do is obviously read books, right? But then the issue is most people don't like to read books, which is fine, because in this day and age, you really don't have to necessarily just read books for you to get certain knowledge that you need to get. There's things like YouTube. On YouTube, I mean, like, you have like a gang load of channels on YouTube that deal with different aspects of you developing yourself as a person. Because if you're going to improve your level of personal development, remember, things like that, they help you to become, firstly, more confident. Because if you're more confident in yourself, you're less likely to be swayed from left to right by different circumstances in your life. And one thing about anxiety is you have to remember, don't nurse anxiety. Don't nurse certain things that are not in your favor. You know, I'm not trying to bash anyone here. I'm not trying to say that, you know, you don't have people that are in like special situations or whatever. No, but what I'm trying to say is don't nurse situations that are not in your favor. You don't want to call it my anxiety. What? It's yours. You're claiming it. Okay. Yeah. Words like that or that way of speaking, try and cut it out of your vocabulary. You see, because now you sort of embody this victim mentality that, oh my gosh, everything is just bad and my life is like this. Nah. Trust me. Don't do that to yourself. You know, so personal development is one thing that's really gonna help you. You see. So I mean, on my side personally, for example, on YouTube, the kinds of channels that I can recommend is, for example, impact theory. You know, if you haven't heard of impact theory, there's Valuetainment, there's Lewis Holmes, there's Gary Vee, but those are just a few, you know, where if you dive into that kind of content, right, it's gonna help you mentally, you know, because mentally you need to become a slightly different person if you're going to deal with things like anxiety. You don't want to think to yourself that one day something magical is going to happen and you're going to become less anxious about certain things that are always, you know, putting you on edge. Point number 4, change the quality of people you spend the most time with. So obviously, I mean, we all know this is like a known fact. You are somewhat the average of the 5 people that you somewhat spend the most time with. Legit. You cannot argue with that. If you're going to spend most of your time with people that are always talking about problems and just like sulking the whole day, complaining about this, complaining about that, crying about this, gossiping about this, if that's like your group of people, you may think to yourself, but I don't participate. I just sit back and I listen and I'm just there. Maybe I'm the one that's trying to always be the voice of reason. It doesn't matter. If those are the kinds of people you spend your time with, that's a problem. You want to change that. Now, funny thing is, in this day and age, right, that the quality of people that you spend time with, it is not necessarily direct or in person. This could literally be, for example, the kind of content that you spend your most time with. If, let's say, whenever you're eating or whatever, because I know this is something that, I mean, we're in 2020, whatever year you're watching this, it doesn't matter. But we know that this is more like that time in our lives, right, where people cannot just like, let's say, like make food and then just eat it. No, usually when someone makes food, they have to be watching something while eating that food. It's like it is what it is, you know. I think that's just how it is. But then what you may want to assess now is the quality of whatever it is that you spend the most time with. What do you watch all the time? Are you just watching, I don't know, ASMR videos or just gossip channels or whatever, or channels on news and just random? Yeah, you want to assess that kind of stuff, you know, because those things, they do go into your subconscious and it's almost like it becomes part of you, you know. So when things like dealing with challenges, you know, hit you in the face, you need something to always fall back on, something specific, something concrete, something meaningful. You don't want to just always have at your disposal garbage, you know, like how on YouTube you open like a homepage, right, and then it like gives you recommendations. If, let's say, your homepage, the recommendations is just like pranks and jokes and what, and that's like how you spend most of your time or most of your free time, that's a problem. I'm not trying to say every day or every moment in your life there shouldn't be any time for, you know, just chilling or just relaxing. Obviously, there's a time for everything, but then the amount of time you spend on everything should not be the same. You see, so if you spend like 2 hours on doing something super constructive, something meaningful, it doesn't now mean you should spend 2 hours doing nonsense. No, the balance is not 50-50. You know, half juice, half water is not good juice. If you've made it this far, Yiso is the bonus point. I wrote here, think about the life you want to somewhat live when high school is done, you know. So you want to proactively, you know, take some time regularly to think about, you know, the year after school. Because the thing is, most of the time, okay, if you're in grade 12 or if you're not in grade 12, maybe this might not make a lot of sense to you now. But then if you're in grade 12, normally I mean, like after high school, the thought is, you know what, you gotta go to varsity, study, yada yada yada. But while you're thinking in that way, try and make decisions based on what you know you can live with, you know, because you don't want to pressurize yourself based on what other people want or based on what other people want for you. What I can say is consider the advice you get, yes, but then don't just go head first into anything that you are somewhat being suggested to do, because normally people do those kinds of things, right, so that they can withdraw themselves from being accountable for their decisions, so that when things like start to, you know, not work out, they can always be like, oh, this person made me do it, this person said I should do it. You know, it's almost like people would much rather not make their own decisions, so that when they make a decision based on what someone else said, they always feel as though, you know what, when things start to go bad, I can just, you know, chill and blame someone else. It's really not going to help you anyways. So in terms of like you thinking of, you know, whether you're going to take a gap year or whatever it is that you're going to study, or where you're going to study, what you're going to study, how long you're going to study, how it's going to be financed, all that stuff, take, you know, some time to think about it properly. You know, don't let it be something passive. If you know that by now maybe you haven't applied anyway and you're still anxious and you're still thinking, but what's the point of applying, my marks are low, what, I mean, that's just you making excuses for yourself. The least you can do is to just apply anyways and get those bad responses anyways, you know, because if you put it this way, whether you apply or not, right, if you, for example, know that if I apply I'm gonna get rejected, and you're like, I better not apply because I'm gonna get rejected, I mean, whether you apply or not, you're still in the same position anyways. But then you applying, at least what that does is it's going to put you in a situation where it does not now just stay in your head. You're not constantly having this battle in your head of what if. If you think you know what the results are and you're holding back from actually doing something because you think you know, trust me, it's not good enough. Whether you think you know or not, you still actually have to do the thing that you think you should not do, so that you do get the results you know you're going to get, so that in your mind it's not something you keep holding on to. You don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're always thinking what if, you know, because I mean, like one way or the other, you could think your marks are low, right, but then you apply to that one place and they actually, you know, maybe consider you never know, you know, or they might say, you know what, we're going to reject you, but if there's still space, maybe we'll hit you up. Things like that. You're not going to put yourself in those situations if you don't apply anyways, and you just think, let me chill, I'll just like apply with my grade 12 marks or whatever. Nope, unless you want to take a gap year, obviously. While I'm here, I think point number 4, the previous one, right, about, you know, changing the quality of people that you spend the most time on. I feel like going back there and thinking, you know, the people that you spend your time with, right, what they talk about, what you guys do, that's important. You know, if you're the kind of people that are always trying to get in trouble so that you have like stories to tell and whatever, you know, you think you're cool, you're fooling yourself. Like, hello, no one really cares, you know. In as much as you think they do, they don't care. You know, you might think you're the guy and the it because you're doing all this nonsense. No one cares, you know. No one cares. Okay, so I guess that's that from my side. If this was helpful, if this was meaningful, then feel free to subscribe. Don't forget to give this video a like, and yeah, you can let me know what you thought of what I mentioned, and obviously I will catch you in the next video.